It is 5:30. And I would like to call to order the meeting of the select board of the 25th regarding governance. A roll call vote, John Round,
Here.
Brian Solacey,
Here.
Kathy Bellata, Ann Harrison here, and Becky Jakes is here. And with us, we have Susan Beckman. Thank you, Susan. Okay, I'm gonna mute my phone.
Okay, thank you. So today we're going to talk about two topics as an update for the governance project. When we last met, which I believe was in April, feels like years ago, we put forward some recommendations, and those included the short-term recommendations, which were to set up annual meetings for committees, boards, and departments, and get some ideas about how to set priorities, and holding the first one in June. So tonight, we're going to go through the design of that potential meeting, which is slotted for June 22nd, which is on the Thursday before the town meeting week. So hopefully that'll work out. That will encompass a goal sharing piece. So they'll each share goals, and we'll go through the detail on that. The one thing that I do need to double check, and I know we started this, was making sure that all boards and committees minutes and websites were up to date. And I think that had started, but I don't have an update on that in terms of it being completed at this point, but we will make sure that's done before the end of the month. And the whole concept of creating a liaison program. So those are the sort of four key things, and that's what we'll report back on tonight. In addition to that, with the advent of the Manchester Essex Regional School District budget, I put together a concept for a listening tour, and we talked about doing listening tours and kicking those off. So we'll talk in general about a listening tour, and then we'll talk specific about the possibility of doing a first listening tour in June prior to the town meeting vote around the school district budget. And the thought process is that it may be helpful to get out there with a consistent message and be able to share and get feedback from the community before town meeting on something like that. So that's sort of the agenda for tonight. Any, yes,
It's likely that the town meeting will have two subjects. The school budget and the planning board. Articles.
Rules
I
and
didn't
regs.
realize that.
Rules and regs, and I hope something for administration.
Okay.
So probably not rules and regs, because that's their own.
Yeah, that, but
yes.
they're missing a piece,
Yes.
and I think they need a listening tour more than we do.
Well, let's not go there right
Well,
now.
But can we
No, I'm hearing
combine
what you're
it?
saying. Sure,
Can we, so
absolutely.
that when we're talking to people?
Yep.
We can talk about
Yes.
both.
The answer is absolutely yes. And I didn't know that, and we can absolutely roll that in and look at it and see how it can work out. Sure.
Yeah, we could talk about special town meeting.
Yeah.
There may be
In
there may be
general,
a couple
two
of other
topics.
articles as well, so.
Right.
So that could be the platform, and it would be smart to do it inclusive of everything that they're going to see. So I agree.
Make it feel as if we have one kind of instead of six.
No, that makes sense. Any other
It
thoughts?
does.
That sounds good. Good. No?
And how will that look? This, trying to get that set up before the town meeting.
We're talking about that today. I have a schematic we put together, so we'll talk about it.
Okay.
There's a document for you to look at. Okay. All right. So I'm kind of thinking, why don't we start with the draft board committee department meeting? Is that okay? Does everybody have their copy? Greg made some extra copies for people.
You want one?
No, it's not, I had it,
So I think these were sent in advance.
yeah.
Okay, good. So, and John, hopefully you've got one as well. So,
Yes, that the agenda along with the stuff.
okay, good. Okay, so this is a working document relative to, how the meeting would be designed, so forth and so on. We thought it might be a good idea to do it from 6 to 8 in the high school cafeteria, serve pizza, because it's a nice thing
It's a
to
great
do for
idea.
people that work all day and
Yep.
can come into the meeting. The setup is
Excuse me, if
basically,
you're gonna chew gum, you better give gum to everybody. JK, just kidding.
okay. We have invitations have gone out to all of the key boards, committees, and departments. To date, we had 16 responses so far.
Yeah, something like that.
They're due on June 1st. Debbie's gonna send another tickler. We're hoping to get upwards of 30, 32 people. That would be a target.
Do you need phone calls made?
Well, that's
I mean-
something, yeah, we might need to do that, and I think we'll see how Debbie does with her next round. We have time.
Yep.
And the good news is the design is flexible enough, we can add whatever we need to do. But we're assuming we're gonna be about 30, okay, around that number, 30 something. So the construct is up the 6 tables, you know, they have all the round tables there.
Mhm.
We're going to try to attempt to assign the tables by intersection of work. So for example, it may not be a perfect one-to-one, but having the DPW department along with Downtown Improvement Committee and Bike and Ped and try to get some, and if we can get 2 people from DPW, maybe we can have 2 tables because that's a lot of intersects. But the goal is to have about 6 people at each table with the department head, the committees that intersect with them, so there can be a combined conversation. But that is not exclusive to the point that everybody will hear what everybody is saying in those meetings, in those table meetings, because that's the way the design will work. So flip charts on each table, so we'll be able to document information, slide projection for a PowerPoint on the table itself. And we have built, thanks to Tiffany, a governance page, web page on the town website. It's not populated yet, but it will be a place where people will be able to go and get all the documents they need for this meeting in advance. In addition, it'll be a place where we can archive the results of the meeting and have a place for the departments and boards and committees to go to and the public to kind of see what's going on relative to the work that's around that. So we're working ahead of that in some ways. But
Susan,
yes,
sorry, the flip charts, are you going to have one person at each table who's going to be kind of heading up flip charts, overseeing?
we're gonna have the table leader
Okay,
who will be there. So there'll be a person, he'll be one of the participants.
okay.
But the good news is Sylvia
Mhm.
is offered to co-facilitate with me. So we'll have 2 people floating
Okay.
around the 6 tables and the ability to go table to table to make sure people are on task and we're doing all the right stuff and making sure that happens. So on the table, the concept is that there would be the master plan update, which we haven't, it's the draft, but it's an update based on where we are in the master plan. The survey results that we did throughout all the boards and committees with all the information that they shared. And in addition to that, the inventory page that we have with all the boards and committees and where they intersect. That will, again, will be all in advance, but it will also be on the table for reference for everyone there to work off of. We will have a sign-in point because we want to make sure that people go to their table assignments and everything is clear where they're sitting. And we'll have a short, what we call rules of engagement for the meeting, general directions on what the plan is and how it will work. So that's kind of the setup, the tactical pieces of it. The desired outcomes are 4. One is to understand the current goals and work of the boards, committees, and departments. The second is to identify ways that the board, committee, and departments interact and impact work between the 2. Define a consistent liaison role for each of the board, committee, and departments. And identify topics that were useful and an agreement for a follow-up meeting. So those are the 4 key things that we want to accomplish that evening. Make sense? Yeah.
Big outcomes.
Yeah, but I think they're reasonable. You know,
Oh, yeah.
we run a good meeting. I think it'll be reasonable. So again, using the master plan, we talked about this. There'll be 2 breakout sessions as we go through it. We'll run through the meeting in a second. And we're going to group by intersections. So content is first 15 minutes introductions. Everybody goes around, has their pizza, talks about who they are, the context and the agenda review. We'll take them through a short PowerPoint to just put everything in, why we're here, how we got here, what the expectations are. The first piece is a 20-minute section for each table to answer 3 questions. Okay, and the first is, what is my committee working on that could affect another committee? What are other committees working on that could affect my efforts? And are there goals that should be worked jointly between committees? So everybody will have what their goals are. They could share them quickly up front. It'll be on the paperwork in advance, but trying to get to the point of where are the intersects and how can we work on these together? So it's an opportunity to get together and talk about that. The leader will summarize those on the flip chart at a high level, and then we'll go through each group in the next 15 minutes to share what those are. So people will begin to see the patterns of what's going on. The next in-group piece is about a 15-minute time frame, and that's defining the liaison expectations. Okay, and if you flip to the end of this document, there's the discussion guide that we put together. And I want to make sure that we put Kathy Lada has been extremely a great partner in helping us brainstorm some of these things, so it's been very helpful. But during that 15-minute period around the liaison meeting,
Is that, I'm sorry, is that, which one is that one?
it's on the second,
Should be the
it's on
second
the
page.
back.
Okay, sorry. Yep,
Got it? Okay.
very difficult. Sorry.
So the directions around that breakout period is, confirming expectations is about facilitating effective communication between boards and committees. Now, this does not get to who has a liaison and who doesn't. Okay, that's a next follow-up step. But right now, we want to get as many people comfortable with the role, just so people are clear on what it is. And again, it's not to make it extra work. It's not to make it a report out that you have to write up and share with your board every week. It's just a format to follow as you report back. So understand the whole is to confirm the expectation, understand of the joint and overlapping work between the groups and the partner committee to which you're assigned to as a liaison. And then the 3 basic things: understand, attend, and report back. So understanding what are we working on together, what's the work that could affect other committees' efforts, and what are the other committees are working on that affect ours. That goes in line with what we just talked about at the beginning, but that's a starting point. But every single month, or however frequently the liaisons will work together, they'll have these first 3 questions put together. Then they'll attend the partner committee. Now, the point here is that you can review the agenda, find out what's going on in advance, and be prepared to be there so you know what to report out on. If you can't get to a meeting, then the point is to have a conversation with the chair, read the minutes, but at least have it available that you'll be able to get back and report back to your home committee, for lack of a better term, to make sure that you've got a clear sense of what's going on. What's important in the beginning, once these liaisons are put together, you decide the frequency. Are we going to attend once a month? Are we going to attend every month and a half? Whatever it is, but there'll be a frequency defined for that. And then finally, it's reporting back to your own committee, which happens today, right? The committee reports come back, but this is going to just give it a little bit more structure. Any thoughts?
Some of the agendas or the agendas of some committees are very, very long and detailed. And I don't know that they need to be for some of them. And I don't know how that might be able to be addressed in terms of whether or not they really understand what an agenda is supposed to entail. It's not every little. I'm not talking about.
Right, so I guess, so are you suggesting we would want to take an opportunity at some point to highlight best practices?
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Best
There
practices.
there are instructions, right, for committee chairs, but it's still helpful to have a discussion around best practices, what constitutes a good agenda, what constitutes good minutes. That sort of stuff.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, that's a good point. That's not part of this first meeting, but it could certainly be an adjunct too.
Exactly.
And the reason is we're running tight on 2 hours. We want to keep it at 2, but I think it's a really good point. And certainly that could be a great follow-up point for the next.
It could
meetings.
even be a, just part of a packet for an incoming chair. It doesn't have to be a formalized.
Right.
Right, I don't,
Good.
Can you give an example of a committee that has excessive agenda? That I don't read all the.
yes,
agendas.
but not.
Yes, I think I understand.
Mhm.
Okay.
I'm sorry, is it a secret?
Don't want to embarrass anybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So again, that's the discussion guide. So they'll take about 15 minutes and run through that. And again, the purpose of this guide is to give a framework and get feedback from them as, is there everything here that should be here? Are there other things you'd like to see? And just be very specific about that. So we'll modify as needed. And then again, come back and share that with the group for about 30 minutes and talk about it. We built a lot of time at the end because everybody always goes over. But we want to make sure that we close with a 15-minute wrap up of what did you think? Was it helpful? What can we do better next time? When can we meet again? How frequent should this be? And then summarize and set the next date. So that's sort of the encapsulation of the design of the meeting for the first one. And I think it's enough, I think enough meat in there to get some things done, but it also can start setting a practice to see how it feels and then how often they should happen. The few people I've talked with since our last meeting at the Board of Selectmen or Select Board, sorry, was they're excited about it. These committee members are coming up and saying, wow, this is a great chance for us to get together and understand what everyone's doing and the department heads. So I think we're walking into a positive piece.
I would say too, when you're talking about attending as a liaison, I have found that at least in terms of being a member of the select board, where I'm often, and I know you have been probably, but been asked to weigh in on topics being, so you're not just there listening. And this is, I think, something that needs to be determined prior to liaising, so that if somebody is asked for an opinion, okay, I'm sorry, that's not part of what a liaison does, but I would be very happy to get back, or something like
So I
that. I
think-
think that,
I think if we change the verbiage under the attend section in the document.
yeah,
The sub bullets, I think, get to what you're referring to, that the liaison has to prepare in advance, you know? They look at the agenda, and if they feel there's going to be engagement, they should obtain their home committee's
you can
perspective.
do
if
that.
they- Yeah, if
and
they
that's
can.
my concern is, and things
They can't
come up.
represent their own position.
But this is just to anticipate, do we define that in the liaison role that, okay, as a select board member, do we answer, do we not? And this is, that can be-
I think if you added the word observe.
Well, I
Sounds
think if
absurd.
it's
still
a,
get asked for.
Yeah, I
Because,
mean-
you know, the last meeting I was at, after the meeting, I was sat down for 15 minutes, talked to. Okay. But as far as the actual meeting, I just sat there and observed.
but I think the question is, if a question comes up at a meeting and we have already discussed it and there's a clear position, I think it's fine for the liaison to speak up. But,
And that's where I'm not sure.
okay. So
That's
what you're
where
not sure of. Okay, okay.
I don't,
So what would you like the preferred response to be?
I don't know, but I'm just, sometimes, you know, if we can all hear the same thing, but like that old game telegraph,
Yeah.
it's actually different.
Okay.
So sometimes I think it's that, are we, as a liaison, do you weigh in at a meeting or not? And I just, sometimes you have to wing it. I get it.
I think you can easily sort of frame it up by this. If the home board, I'm just going to say home
Mhm.
board or committee has deliberated a topic and taken a vote, you can absolutely share that information. What you cannot do is deliberate
Yeah.
without your board
Oh, yeah.
in that meeting.
Right.
So I think as simple as it is, and it sounds simple, I know sometimes it's harder, it's about if the deliberation has happened, the vote has been taken, and there's a clear stand on the committee, you can share that information. If not, I would say no, because that's the whole point of liaison is to bring it
But I
back
think
to
a
the board.
lot of the questions that come up too, sometimes they're just scheduling, like when is this gonna get discussed, or has this been discussed, and those, I think,
Those are easy.
I
enough.
think
Yes.
easy enough.
That's a
And that
very,
saves Debbie time answering after the chair.
I'm more talking
Yeah.
about, say you're sitting in a meeting of the planning board. And they say, Becky, can you explain to me
Oh.
the reasoning behind the
That's different,
select
yeah.
board doing blah, blah, blah? And I don't think that that is an appropriate venue in which to
But
say
we've
that.
already deliberated and voted, so.
I still don't think
Would you-
that,
Would you suggest that a liaison just refer the chair to talk to the other chair of the board? Like you could say, well, how we voted,
I think
Right?
that's a good idea,
but
yes.
then just say,
And
if
then-
they start poking at why, you say, could you give the chair of the select board?
I think that's something we need to think about
Yeah,
and
okay.
figure out how best that should be handled. What do you think?
So what I'm, just quickly making a note of is that there needs to be some rules of engagement.
Yes.
Around this program,
Absolutely.
and we can flush those out as we go. before
And
we
that's-
launch this.
Yes.
Okay,
All
And-
right,
and-
so I have a question. Right now, we're talking about liaisons in the context of the select board. But there might be, coming out of this meeting, where there might need to be liaisons relative from one committee to another. I mean, that certainly is the case with the CPC, where the people are dictated. There are certain people for other committees that must sit on the CPC.
Mhm.
I'm not aware of other committees that are like that. But there are intersections, and you put that together, I know, in slides, Susan, I think the last time, where some of those intersects, you've got to kind of pay attention to them because there are other committees that might need to be involved or be aware of what you're doing.
Would it be fair to say, I'm sorry, Ingrid, go ahead.
That's, if you're a member of a committee because you're from another committee.
Right.
You were a member of that committee
it's different.
and you were entitled to speak.
Yes, yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That you're automatically a liaison. You perform that liaison role because of your role as part of that committee. But I don't know if there are situations, I just think zoning board, planning board, where there's some overlap and stuff. I don't think there are many situations there, but that could come up.
And that's why we need to be,
Yeah, the affordable housing.
Yeah, I think what we're hovering around are the adjudicatory boards and committees as opposed to some of the advice.
Yeah,
Maybe, because that's
with
a more.
what I'm talking.
Yeah, yeah, I think
Thank you.
that's kind of what I'm hearing.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll work that as the next level in terms of rules of engagement.
right.
That out. Okay.
Mhm.
Good
Now,
point.
is the expectation that there will eventually be liaisons for every committee? Because I know that there are committees and there are committees. And some are perhaps not as active as others. Maybe the liaison responsibility is there, but obviously you get to define just how active you need to be depending upon what's going on with that committee.
I think the general rule that I would think is that everybody gets sort of trained or informed about the liaison program.
Right.
Yep.
That from that, there are very clear program, like the select board and their liaisons, but there's others that might be a little more obtuse, and those need to be ferreted out and understood. And some may be, I only liaison twice a year with this committee.
Sure.
And we'll figure that out.
I think the intersects as people better understand what they should work together and what they don't need to work together. I think we'll
Mhm.
probably flesh some of that out too.
I agree. I agree with that.
And I think asking the question during this time frame, do you think your committee needs a liaison? Which ones do you want to liaison with? Might be an interesting question to ask you. But anyway.
Yep.
Did you have something, Brian?
No, I'm just.
I actually just talking about this, I think I'd like to add one other outcome. Seriously, it's just something that kind of came up yesterday because I was just happened to calling to another committee. phrase this? Unwinding the DPW from having to attend so many committees. If we could just have one successful outcome of all the work we're doing, that would be my number one.
Mhm.
I have seen the same presentation from Nate and Chuck at least 3 times in the past month, and it's just, that has to stop. It's just, it's gotta be killing them.
Yes, because they can't do their work.
They
and
don't have
that's
time,
the-
you know, and I presume Betsy may be in a similar situation on the 40A with the task force. So anything we can do to help those specific departments be as lean as possible. Meaning people may have to come to them on their terms as opposed to them going to individual
Exactly.
meetings, you know, but just, I think everybody's got an appreciation and it'll really come out during those intersect conversations.
Well, maybe there's an opportunity to have joint meetings.
There you go.
That's,
Right?
yep,
And that
Or-
would facilitate, that would have multiple benefits.
Meeting and everybody come there, right? Something like,
that.
That would spur more interaction as well.
anything to help them out.
Mhm.
I agree. I think that would be a good.
Mhm.
So, okay. Anything else from your perspective on this? Is it in
This is
line? with
great,
what
thank
you
you.
think? So it'll be our first one. We'll learn a lot from it. But I certainly want to thank Sue Croft and Debbie and certainly Kathy for their efforts in this, and we'll continue to move forward and see how many we have and we're gonna get together.
I do have another,
Mhm.
so this is a meeting that we are asking specific people to attend. What if there are members of the community who would like to attend? How do we address that?
You mean in terms of coming to the
Just
just to observe?
to
or just
observe.
be there?
Yeah.
People are welcome. It's an open meeting.
Right.
You know, there's
So
no.
then that's, I just want
Yeah.
to make
It's
sure
gonna be a working meeting.
It's a
People have
working
to, they
meeting,
can
right.
certainly come and observe them.
course.
they can
Yeah, yeah.
observe, right?
Anything beyond that.
But no kids into that.
We will defeat the purpose if you don't allow people.
Absolutely,
absolutely.
that's,
It's not a
I
secret.
just
Yeah.
want to, it's not a
It's
secret,
not a secret.
but that's why I wanted to have that put out
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Well, and to that point, you know, the making sure that people are aware that it's happening and that is important. Okay. All right, so that's the draft board committee meeting, May 22nd, hopefully. We'll get done and go from there. Okay, thank you for your input on that. Good stuff. And we'll keep working on it. So if anything else comes up, and you'll see the final piece of this before, you know, we have, and of course, I'm hoping you attend if you can. It'd be nice to have you guys there. But anyway, so, all right, so that's that. Now, the next piece is on the topic of the listening tour. And the first page is the draft, which sort of frames up the whole construct of why a listening tour, and I'm not going to read through all of that, but basically, it is meant to be in conjunction with a lot of the things you're already doing. So if you're doing conversation corners, if you're meeting at different events and things, but the point is to try to formalize somewhat of a schedule and a pace and a frequency to do this. One of the things that came up, and I think this was discussed here at some point, but we used to do all the time, which is once a month or once every 6 weeks, depending on topic, you spend a half hour before your select board meeting, open it up for comments for people to come in. You're all here in the room anyway. You can get input and feedback. It's a great way to have a touch without having to go somewhere else. So there's an opportunity for that in conjunction with your corners and whatever else you're going to do. So this document is really more about the formal listening tours, and it's based on a topic. So as we talked about the school, the special town meeting in June, what are the topics on that? And the construct is that you're engaging the public before an event happens, like a town meeting, where you're presenting the fact-based information in a very clear, cogent way. And you're sharing it and asking for feedback. You know, there's often times where everything is, people are just being talked at.
Yes.
And what we're looking for with this this listening tour is to get the engagement. So it isn't about going through the chair to ask a question, it's about having a conversation. So clarity about also about how decisions are made. You know, a good example of that is when not to bring up a hard part here, but the regional 911 went to a vote and then, oh, wait, the select board makes that decision. So you want to get ahead of those things and be clear about who is making the decision, how you're getting the information forward, but opening the dialogue for that discussion, very important. There,
I'm gonna, with that, with conversations and having a dialogue and a discussion prior to a meeting. So prior to an agenda and what may or may not be discussed prior to opening a meeting. And engaging with the public. I mean, we still have open meeting law. You can't be discussing certain things that a member of the public wants to discuss if it's not, as you know, if it's not posted. And how do you handle that?
well,
In addition, if it's something that people don't necessarily have the ability to weigh in on and understanding how a public meeting runs. That's, how do you do that?
so this is not a public meeting, okay? You're not a board you're not under open meeting law because you're not going as a full board to these. This is one or two, I'm suggesting 2 board members.
Okay, I
only.
thought you meant full board here
No, no,
before.
no, no.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
when you say
Well-
a half an hour before the.
Well,
meeting,
that's a different story. That's a different.
That's what I'm
just- that-
talking
okay.
about. I'm talking about that one with everybody
But you're
here.
not deliberating, you're listening. Okay, so the point is that the open board meeting is for people to come in and be able to comment on things that are important to them. So you want to set some guidelines around that, to your point. It's not a deliberation. It's not a use of necessarily fact-based. It's just another point to have a conversation.
Well, is it a collection mechanism? Because if
Exactly,
more than,
yeah.
if a quorum is in attendance, we can't really have a conversation.
Right.
Right, so one option might be limit the pre-select board meeting to 1 or 2 attendees, so it's not a deliberation,
6 to 6:30.
right?
Yeah, you can easily rotate that and make that happen.
But I
You know,
think
but
we
you can't,
also,
to your point though, Becky, you can't deliberate in
Right,
that.
right.
that
so
point
we
if you
need
don't
to
have
make
a-
that
Yeah,
clearly
yeah.
understood to whomever wishes to come in and
Yes,
talk.
yes.
That we can't have a back and forth
Right,
on solving a situation that someone comes in saying, I got a problem with the way this is
yeah, and
done."
that, yes, and it's not, yes, and you're right, that's not the way to do it. But if, for example, there is a select board meeting the week before town meeting and people have additional questions on the topics of town meeting, you can use that half hour in advance to
Yeah.
share information and set context and do that and even get feedback if you want to. But
Yeah,
the point is that it's just an opportunity. It's like a conversation corner. People can come in and share information. It's not meant to be deliberating. But, and we can frame that up. But this, what I'm talking about with this actual listening tour is going out and being a little bit more specific and formal about that. But that's a good point. So, let me just make a note here.
and I say that because expectations should be clearly laid out so that there's nobody's disappointed
Right.
when they take their time to come in to address someone on the select board.
Try to get told we can't say anything.
Exactly,
Exactly.
exactly. That's,
Well,
That's a really good look.
yeah, it'd be very,
Well, and
very
it's just
clear about what it
frustrating.
is, you know,
Yeah.
it's to pose a question.
yeah.
Yeah, I think you overestimate the ability of some people to understand that there are constraints.
Well, but it needs to be chaired. It needs to be managed. It needs to be facilitated. So at the beginning of a half hour, if somebody's coming in, whether it's 2 people or the board, here's what we're here to do tonight. Here's sort of the rules of engagement. This is what we can do. And we're here to listen to feedback that you have. We're not going to be able to deliberate. We're not going to take it up on our agenda. We may put it on an agenda going forward. So there needs to be sort of that.
You need to
Preamble.
have the preamble
Yes.
that is right in front of whomever
Yes.
is there. That
And to play it safe, just maybe start with 1 or 2 board members to play it safe, so we don't get into OML problems until we all
Right.
get comfortable with it.
Well, and it would be kind of good to rotate, people through,
Mhm.
so, so anyway, okay, that's good. Good feedback. All right, so that's for that piece. Good on that?
Mhm.
Okay.
So in effect, that half hour is essentially a conversation corner, shall we say?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
John.
That's what it is.
We'll get the sign.
Well, we did-
Fine. We put it out for a
I
half an
like
hour
it.
and then
Put
take it
up
down.
here.
Yep.
Yeah. But I
Fine.
think, yeah, it just offers another touch point, I think is the intention with everybody
Right.
coming in.
Yes.
Which is very important.
Right.
That's,
Okay.
I'm not trying to be,
No, these are very good points, Becky.
No, I mean, one thing I've observed, and I've spoken with a number of people in various settings, if you have half a dozen people you're talking to, they're going to be half a dozen topics.
Mhm.
They all have something they're specifically interested in. And sometimes there is overlap if it's a major issue, such as, say, the school budget or something like that. But most of the time, different people have different concerns. And to try and confine a conversation to this is what we're going to talk about is not going to work. People show up because there's one particular concern that they've got, and hey, there's a venue to talk to somebody who might be able to do something about it, and they want to talk about it.
Right.
So I think that you have to set a theme and say, you'll pick a topic, and this is what we're going to chat about for a few minutes and tell you this is what the story is. But you've got to understand that that may not be the way things are going to end.
I don't necessarily agree with
I
that.
don't either.
Okay,
I think that leaving it open so that if somebody happens to have something, however, what we can do is if you have a lot of people, you just say, all right, because we have
yeah,
this many people in this many minutes, you have 2 minutes to talk tonight, and we can come back to that later. But I think to stick to an agenda, if the point is to have people come in to communicate, it's better not to limit and discourage people.
Right, so there's two
That's what the
different,
listening tour is
right,
for, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
there's
Listening
two
to the
different things
agenda.
we're talking about, conversation corner, pre-meeting
Mhm.
discussion before a select board meeting is one animal.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's the more open, let's hear what you have to say, kind of take account of what people are talking about, a chance for them to come in and voice their opinion and build a relationship with the board. So that's one. The listening tour is a more formal tool, for lack of a better term, that actually has a topic, that actually has an agenda, that actually has facts and opportunities to gain feedback. But again, the goal of the listening tour isn't just to tell things, it's to listen. It's to give good fact-based information, but also get feedback. So as I suggested, 2 board members go. We've done these before and it's worked extremely well. It's good to have 2 people there
Mhm.
because one person is sort of managing the meeting, the other
Yeah.
person's making sure if they're, if you're working together, you can say, oh, and by the way, this and that, and you're keeping notes and making
Yes.
sure things are together. So it's nice to do it in pairs. But there should be an agenda and there should be the talking points. And you'll see as we go into the example that I did, we're beginning to build some of that for this. So that's the piece. But again, the scope, what you're trying to do here is to reach out to as many people across the demographics as you can, identifying the areas. Now, again, for June, it's going to be difficult because we've got a very compressed period of time.
Yeah.
So this is really a very focused effort, and many meetings we can get the board out to between June 5th or June 6th and the 28th. We're not sure, right? I mean, that's something that we have to do, but I think the goal here is to sort of give this a trial run and see how it goes and get a feel for what's going on with it.
I don't understand the tour part. Are we traveling?
You're set, yeah, so there'll be meetings set up, for example. Can we work with the Legion to host a meeting for you to come in and have a listening tour there? Can you go to the PTO meeting in the school district? Can you go, and I'm just making these up, will you be able to go to a Chamber of Commerce meeting for just the businesses in Manchester? So you're reaching different demographics through different meetings. And they shouldn't be more than an hour or so. We're not asking for a 2-3 hour meeting. But trying to keep them concise, but picking the ones where you want to try to reach across the board. We used to do them over at the housing project, and it's the Council on Aging luncheon is a great place to go. I mean, so there's different things where you can interact, but the point is it's a targeted discussion. It's not just listening, it's targeted sharing information, and it gives people a chance to give some feedback and for you to hear that. So it is very targeted. Okay.
And it's going to public venues, not,
Yes.
I have to find somebody in this neighborhood who's willing to.
Well, there's 2 things. If you're on a listening tour for a fall session around the budget, and you want to get ready for other things, there is a targeted one where you go and you get neighborhood captains. We did this during the first building project, where we found neighborhoods and there were people that were willing to host a small gathering at their house. And you could have a conversation. I would say for the one in June, no, it's too much, but it's another mechanism. So there's ways to do that. And I think that it was extremely helpful when we did that with the school building, because you got to the communities that were most impacted by it. And you had a chance for them to speak with you about it. So it can be that too, but it's not necessarily there. So that's why identifying who the key stakeholders are, who are the committees, who are the people we want to talk to, getting all that done up front is very important. Neighborhoods, so forth and so on. Local organizations, you've seen the plan here. And I think overall, again, this is the generic version, but the questions to consider is what issue we're going to address. How can you frame it? What do they need to know? What do we need to know to be prepared? To your point, Becky, everyone that attends and runs these meetings has to be well versed on the topic and making sure they understand it. How do you engage the other boards, departments, and committees in this? This is an important piece. If you're talking about something that's impacting the downtown, just for example, I can think of one thing that could do that. Are the other boards and committees engaged in that as well? Because you want to make sure, again, this is an opportunity to spread it and make that happen. Thinking about the 3 good open-ended questions you can ask and just sort of organizing this in a way that makes it useful for people and inclusive for the community. So that's in general what the construct of the listening tour is. And it is, again, the more formal version of Conversation Corner and a few other things, but it gives the board an opportunity to organize around the topic and be able to make a concise discussion happen, and you get the engagement, which is the piece that we have heard loud and clear, the community wants to
So
say.
it's a little scripted,
Yes.
but it's an exchange.
It's focused on a topic. It might be helpful as if Tiffany did like an infographic on the 2, right?
Yes.
Here's Conversation Corners, what it is, what it isn't.
Yeah.
Here's a listening tour, what it is, what it isn't. She could do a great job with that.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. It's a really good idea. How many Tiffany's do we
I know,
have?
how many Tiffany's do we need?
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, good. All right, so in construct, that's where it is. So what we have now is an attempt after the Tuesday night meeting, spending time there. I tried to come up with an example of what a listening tour could look like if we were going out for the school. And to your point, Anne, we would kind of do the same thing if there's other issues coming for special town meetings, so not make it necessarily just for that. So Greg can pass that out real quick. Yeah, this was not set in advance because I didn't do it. until
I was gonna say, you said the first page, but where's the
Yeah,
other?
yeah, no, I didn't have time to. I wanted to go to the meeting on Tuesday and get a feel for.
John, I sent an email to you with this.
You're sending something out to me now?
I did at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, let me take a look.
So while this is a draft of an example, what I want you to think about is if you're going to the listening tour, this is what, not this content, but this is the kind of document you would bring. Okay, which sets you up with the goal of what we're trying to do, the objectives of how we're going to do it. What is the context in the background we're talking about? And what is the process? In that case, it would be, what are the questions we want to ask? What are the facts we want to share? But again, it's a simple 1-page document that is targeted towards the topic. Well, simple but hard, but yeah, you get what I'm saying. But I'm trying very hard to keep it being a high level document so you can use it as a guide more than anything else. So for this, this was meant to just sort of begin to think about the goal of what we're trying to do and working through it. So I think the background piece is pretty straightforward, right? It describes exactly what happened. Now, we're not digging into numbers on this, right? This is not, there'll be a fact sheet that you'll have if people ask questions about numbers and what those are.
This is, as Kathy says, your
Yeah.
high level.
If this is a fact sheet, it's wrong. Because the Essex enrollments have not increased. They've just decreased less.
Okay, there's a good point. Okay. But
And you have to be
yes.
careful to actually be
Exactly,
factual.
exactly. So that's a good point. So we'll fix that. But again, draft version to trying to get the
Yeah,
message out.
right.
But this is so important to be absolutely accurate because you don't, words really matter on this.
Yeah.
And you have to make sure that's right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good point. So anyway, but again, the context, the background. So what the process will be for this, hopefully, is to frame the issue as we just talked about, create a communication plan. This is where Tiffany hopefully will help with bunches of this, is that there'll be a document that will frame the issue, give facts and figures, high level, but enough that people will know what they're going to come and listen to.
That's what I was gonna ask you. From whom does the person attending or leading a listening tour get the background?
So it's all going to be done in a package. I call it
Who's doing that?
well,
So it'll be staff.
staff.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's, okay.
So it needs to be fact checked. It needs to be clear. It needs to be put together, but staff will put that together. I used to call it a meeting in a box. So you basically have everything you need to go run the meeting. You've got the agenda, the background, all that information. So that would be something that would be compiled with staff. Identifying the key stakeholders, the groups, the committees, that's something that needs to get done pretty quickly on this topic, and again, if we're doing it for the whole special town meeting. And again, conducting the small community group meetings, which is basically sharing information, giving feedback, identifying what their thoughts are. And again, this is, I think, really important as you prepare as the select board for town meeting, because as you stand up in front of town meeting and talk about this, having the agency to say, we heard, we spoke to people. I think it beyond what you typically do in meetings would be very helpful. And the last one here, which I think is really important, it's also somewhat of a recruiting tool to get people and volunteers to help spread the message. Because if you have the facts and if people are attending the meetings, you can say, you know what, if you can send this to 2 or 3 people and help engage them to come to town meeting. I reckoning back to Tuesday with that young man who said that you need to show up, you've got to come out and vote. So this can be something that can spur people's attention to the importance of this, and also asking for people to engage with others to have them come. It's important. Okay, so that's the basis of what the general town meeting piece would, or the first listening tour could look like. So if you agree to move forward, this obviously needs a fair amount of work between now and next week, and thinking about what we want to do with it. But if you can say, yes, this is something we want to, move forward with, getting in touch with the district to make sure that all the information is accurate and everything is being presented exactly the way it should be is important. Creating those talking points, the communication plan and all of that by May 31st, which is, next Tuesday or Wednesday, I think. And just putting that all together is going to be very important. Identifying the meeting locations, that's the other piece. Who's available? What's happening between now and then? Can we get time at and I'd love your input of what you think might be the best places. And then launch the listening tour for a 3-week period, starting the week of June 5th. Now I guess the school board is doing their vote on the 6th. So probably we'll have to wait for that to finish that piece, but towards the end of that week might be one, maybe one the following week or 2, depending on what we could do. So maybe set a series of 2 or 3 meetings up between that point and town meeting to share that information. So that's the concept.
Thanks. Good.
So at what point do we need to get clear on a date for a spring town meeting? Is that the right? Because there's 2 potential topics, right? As Ann said, there's the school and there's potential zoning. So what's the drop dead date for making a decision? A, are we going to have a meeting? And B, what's on it?
So we will know what the school is proposing on the 7th. We'll make that decision on the 6th. the planning board, they have a hearing on the 6th as well. And it'll probably go and they'll probably spill over into a second night on the 12th.
Aren't they usually Monday night, the 5th? They're on the 6th.
So we're meeting the 5th.
Mhm.
Oh, that's right. We're meeting the 5th.
So, and then the school and both school and planning board have
They're
meetings.
both meeting on the
On the
6th.
6th.
Okay.
So I would imagine that it would be beneficial to have a joint selectmen FinCom meeting later that week, say the 8th, to make a decision, 7th or the 8th.
The reason I'm pushing on getting all of these dates
Mhm.
outlined now
I
is
agree.
because I'm not gonna be here and I want to make sure you guys have a quorum.
Yeah, June's a complicated month.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking then you'll need a special meeting. You've got a regular meeting on the 5th, but you need a special meeting later that week. And then you need a second special meeting probably on the 13th. Perhaps in the morning, to finalize the warrant, because the planning board will finalize their potential article or articles on the 12th. And if you set the warrant on the 13th, then the special meeting could be 28th or the 29th,
I mean, the special
June.
town meeting.
special town meeting.
All right, so June 7th is when the school board is going to come up with Plan B, correct?
June 6th.
Or June 6th, and we have to get educated on that, and that would be a special meeting, as you say, perhaps on the 8th?
The 7th or the 8th, yes.
Okay, all right, because we need to know the kind of the behind story behind what we're talking about.
Correct.
Okay,
And-
yes, it's a busy time.
And you and the finance committee should talk about, what.
But the implications
Town
are,
meeting article, it just depends what the school is going to put forth as a. As a recommendation for a new budget,
right,
is it going to be? Call it the big cut, or is it going to be the compromise, or is it going to be the original budget again? Obviously, variations of the theme on those three basics, but. Those are the three.
So basically, the special meeting on June 7th or June 8th is it would be just suggesting a joint
Meeting.
FinCom select board meeting to take a position, make a recommendation
Yes,
on what the school committee is bringing forward.
yes.
And we may have some articles from the planning board at that time, or maybe not.
We'll have, I think we'll have draft. I don't know if we'll have final version.
Because I know for their,
They could wrap it up on the 6th, but
their public hearings all got deferred to the, everything they were, the 12th, yeah. It wasn't the
they're
6th.
not meeting the 6th.
Well, and that's what I'm questioning. They just defer, they had open public hearings the other night and everything that was an open public hearing got moved to the 12th, I believe.
That was for their,
There's zoning, the
the
board
rules and regs.
regs,
Rules and regs, the compost side, there were 3 things.
but not the,
But not the zoning amendment,
Well, let's see. Okay,
I don't believe.
okay, that could be.
I'm
but
pretty
we
sure-
need,
yeah, it
we
was a-
should determine that.
Yeah, we just need to get clarity.
Would it be helpful to involve somebody from the school committee, somebody from the planning board?
Might speak up a little, sorry.
Sorry, would it be appropriate to have subject area specialists with us for the listening tour?
Sure.
Mhm.
Meaning member of the school committee, member of the planning board.
I would say that would depend upon what the point of our listening tour is. Is it from a
Yeah,
select
yes.
board perspective, or is it?
Or is it trying to help educate people about what they are going to face at town meeting?
I think the intention is to have it be the select board members as the leadership of the town going out and meeting with the people. You should be versed well enough in the topics that you're talking about that you don't need subject matter experts because you're not there to deliberate or answer questions. You're there to listen. And if there's questions that come up, that's what you have to bring back.
So
I mean, it's okay to say, I'll have to get back to you. on
Yeah.
Right, right.
when in the schedule do we?
Get back.
Get back. No. When do we come together? If we hear something that those other boards should know about.
Right, so this situation is
Is
unique in
unique.
terms of the condensed
Yeah.
timeline that it has. But to answer your question, so your meeting is,
We have to
The
find.
fifth,
finalize
you'll have
the
a
warrant.
meeting on the 20th, a regular meeting on the 20th,
We're finalizing the warrant on the 13th.
yes. 19th is a holiday, Juneteenth,
Yeah.
Ah, yes, thank you, sorry.
new holiday that we have to remember. So,
Is there a-
yes,
Is there a downside, to Ann's point, is there a downside to including a subject matter expert like a member of the school committee or the planning board? Because of the compressed time frame, right? We don't want to get into a situation where there's any lack of clarity or any delay in getting people information they seek. And I guess I'm not sure what the harm is.
I don't think there's any, at least in my mind, I don't think there's any harm in doing it. I think you just have to be clear what the intention is.
Right. I mean, we can offer it to them, doesn't have to, if they don't want to participate, fine, but I think it would be nice to offer.
I'm looking at the calendar right now, realistically. I mean, if you
Yeah.
are talking about
That's gonna be
June
tough.
12th.
Yeah.
Coming to get your final vote on everything, it basically gives a week before town meeting. So I think almost have to think, well, but a full week. What I'm saying, you've got the week of the 12th, the week of the 19th.
Yes,
Monday's a holiday
Yeah.
and the vote is on the 28th. So you have maybe about 10 days.
yeah.
So the question is, how many listening tour sessions can you have? Maybe there's only 2. Maybe, we have to think about, I'm just saying, being realistic and having the ability to come back and share information and I think this listening tour is going to be a little bit more about education and what the topics are versus really and getting
Right,
feedback.
we're not making the decision, the
Yeah.
townspeople are making the
Right,
decision
right.
and we're there to answer questions
Right,
for.
right.
Okay.
And again, this is about the leadership of the town coming forward and being present with the community on big topics that are coming in front of them. So.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the listening tour for this particular topic, and overall, the listening tour's objective is for us to hear what people have to say. I think because of the compressed timeline here, the information flow is probably going the other way a little bit more.
I agree with that.
Okay, so in the long term, the listening tour is not, that's not what its objective is, but
But
or
it's
what's
short
going
term.
on right now.
Yeah.
I think we have to use it as a vehicle for
Right.
education.
But to Ann's,
so I wonder if, now that we've gone full circle, and I don't mean to do this, but I wonder if we've gone full circle, that this particular example is not the best example. for
No,
this.
it's probably, you're probably right.
exactly.
And
And I was,
and are we better off holding 3 general public
Yeah.
forums
yeah,
and
Listening to in July.
start to listening to it?
And
in
start,
July?
that's what I was,
Yeah, I
because
agree.
that's what Ann said.
Right, maybe
And
it's
it's-
better to
yes.
do what Ann
Yeah.
suggested and have set up public forums.
Yeah.
Pre-town meeting forum.
with members of the planning board, the
Yes,
school
the
committee, the
yes.
select board, the
Yes.
finance committees.
Yes,
And
For
have
this
the opportunity,
instance.
I think that's exactly
Yeah.
right, because this isn't, to your point, John, and everyone else, this isn't about listening at this is about sharing information and putting things
this is a
out
little
there.
different.
Yeah,
It's different,
Yeah.
so I think that's exactly
We're
right.
gonna do more of the talking than the listening at this point.
Yeah, well, and that's really not the goal, to the point what John said about what a listening tour,
Right, they're
so.
really designed to be more listening than
This
talking.
is a sharing tour.
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
More what we're
Yeah.
sharing.
But I think it's a great example of something that can be adopted as a model going forward.
Yeah, no, definitely.
You know,
Yes.
Just,
and putting some structure around it and communicating it.
Just
as
not
what
this
it is.
application.
Not
I
in
think
this
gives us some
application.
Time to just.
Yeah,
yeah.
Finalize the
Yeah.
format, because truthfully, July and August, really, I don't know how much listing we're gonna do.
Well, yeah. And you know what, it may be July and August, you're doing your work and your first listening tour hits September
Yeah.
after Labor Day. You know, I mean, being realistic about it, that might, and you want to get that ready before.
Yeah,
So-
yeah,
We have
I think,
opportunities to get out there and
Yeah,
engage the public anyway.
I think what might, just from a thought on a subject, when we get that first draft of the facilities master plan or something, that at some point that might make a good
Absolutely.
subject. It's something affects everybody in the
Yeah.
Oh,
whole.
yeah.
town.
Yeah, that's a good
And,
one.
and not,
Yeah,
I won't
lots
say
of
it's not
different-
controversial, but it's right, it's
Right.
within our swim lane here.
I
No, that's
think
a good
it was
point.
a really good decision. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. Did you say swim lane?
Yeah, sorry.
I love that. No, I love,
Sorry.
no. I grew up doing competitive, my corpus. I like that one.
Corporate speaks snuck in there, sorry.
Oh, that's,
There's a lot of
I
that coming up in this.
thought it was literally.
So circling back, just to close out this part of it. What I'm hearing is listening tour sounds like a great idea. It's not the application for this town meeting coming up and trying to compress something
Mhm.
and put a, square peg into a round hole. Rather spend time maybe creating 3 forum opportunities for people to come in after June 12th so that you can have those meetings prior to town meeting. Spend the time over the summer identifying the topic, getting a listening tour really vetted and clearly done on a topic, and then launching later on in maybe September.
And
August,
doing it
September.
concurrently with the liaison work so
Yeah,
that it's
yeah.
all teed up
Yeah,
to go
yeah.
in the fall. And I think
Yeah.
before the
Yeah.
special town meeting in
Yeah.
the fall.
Yeah.
I think that's,
Yeah. I
Really
love
good
that
idea.
idea. I think that's perfect.
Seems like we're trying to rush something that we're not ready.
Well, I think there was a conversation that Greg and I had about, making sure that there's a presence
Mhm.
with the select board and members of the town out with our community, because this is a really important meeting, so,
Yeah.
Anyway, so that makes sense. All right, well, this is exactly the intent of how these things are supposed to work, right? An idea comes forward, you mess it around a little bit and you come up with a better one, and that's great. So,
More ideas.
yeah, it's really good.
Takes a
really good.
village.
So, sound good?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just sort of as a viewpoint and again, looking past today. So the stuff that all the things that I've been working on, but right now this is the focus has been listening to her in this board meeting. A couple of other topics that have come up that after we get some of this done, maybe during the summer, we can address. One is the technology / website communication pieces that we talked about. And there was another one too. What was it?
Succession.
Oh, succession planning. Yeah, so those two could come, in a manner going forward. So feedback for me, anything else I can do? Was this helpful? Okay,
I think I really appreciate the direction this is going, because this is something, I know Greg and I have kind of talked about a lot of these aspects over the last, I don't know, however long.
Yeah,
So it's,
no, just the other day, we had a good conversation.
so this, I think it's really wonderful to see this type of planning and ways to bring it into fruition or to fruition. I'm just talking all over right now, sorry.
I get it.
But I'm very appreciative of the efforts of going into this. Thank you.
Yeah, always open for feedback. If you have anything else. All right. I think
And
that's it
Kathy,
for
thank
me.
you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's doing all of them.
Okay.
Second.
All right, roll call
So
vote.
bad.
John Round,
Oh, yes.
Ryan Solacey, Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
and Harrison.
Yes.
And Becky Jake says yes. Thank you to everybody who attended,
Thank you.
Thank you.
and that's a wrap.
Yay. Okay.
Thank
All right.
you.